I'm trying to come up with better weeks in recent Aston Villa history. I mean, obviously, promotion was so incredible and important to this football club, but that came at the end of a season. The 10 in a row in the championship would have included some 3-game weeks, and that was a fun ride, as was survival, of course. No, that wasn't fun. That was excruciating, but majorly significant to this football club. And of course, beating Liverpool 7-2 is still talked about to this day, but it's not often that you have 3 significant games in the course of a week, and you come through all of them somehow unscathed. That's what's incredible about what we've just gone through. So let's reflect, shall we? Villa 3, Bournemouth 1. We, as mere mortals, simply do not understand what it feels like to be a professional footballer that has logged, in some cases, 300 minutes over 7 days, which included some air travel. I mean, I was shattered emotionally after watching the game on Thursday. Imagine how Martinez, Dean, Cash, Konza, Powell, Tielemans, Watkins, all who played 300 minutes in 7 days, including extra time and penalties, would have felt going into that game on Sunday. Pep Guardiola was saying just after the FA Cup semi-final that it was inhumane to play a game like that so close to other games. Load management is not just some kind of buzzword. It is a true scientific factor in modern football. Exhaustion, both mental and physical, is a real thing, and this Aston Villa team had to muster up the energy to deal with a fresh side that's big and physical, that likes to press, that didn't have a game in midweek, and actually had the lead after half an hour. How we turned that around, particularly after halftime, was truly remarkable. And to no one's surprise, Unai Emery gave all the players Monday and Tuesday off. This was arguably the best week for Unai Emery since he arrived, simply because it was the most demanding week since he's arrived. And the hope that he gives us is that we may still see another week similar to this before the season's over. Welcome officially to the Holy Trinity show, the point of which is to identify the 3 key issues or moments that defined Villa 3, Bournemouth 1. And we had the big guns gathering video for us at Villa Park. Alex Dutton, guitar hero with a tarka. He took his dad to this game for his dad's birthday. What a treat that would have been. Samir Gaby, who had to be feeling weary himself after being in France midweek, flying the Division Retro flag in the process. And we had a first-timer at Villa Park, a Villa Park virgin, a viewer of this show from beautiful Humboldt County in Northern California, Aaron Pimentel. And he had a very good vantage point for this one. And it's always nice when you can make your first visit count with all 3 points. And what makes this game so incredibly satisfying is just how close the key numbers were. I was actually shocked that both teams created 4 big chances with similar shot attempts versus on-target success and similar passing proficiency. One tactical issue that was quite obvious in this game, though, was Villa's urgency and desire to play long, penetrating balls, which I'll talk about in a moment. But even the accurate long ball count in this game was spookily similar. What those numbers tell us is that Villa just made more of the chances we created, whether that was through some individual brilliance, whether it was on the break, in combination, from the build-up. We had examples of all of it in this game. And we also saw another tactic that was re-employed for this game. It was really effective at home to Brighton, and that was hitting Ollie Watkins early and long. And whether that was through Emi Martinez with a driven ball, Matty Cash with 3 long throws, we wanted Ollie Watkins to push the Bournemouth backline back and occupy them. And it seemed to work like a charm because it opened up all sorts of possibilities as the support arrived. Unai Emery made but 2 changes for this game. One was forced on him with Douglas Luiz's suspension, but I was a bit surprised that Diego Carlos did not start this one. So Rodgers and Bailey were in. And one thing I noticed in watching this game a second time is that Moussa Diaby's role was quite clear. He was asked to be between Morgan Rodgers on the left and Leon Bailey on the right, and in behind Ollie Watkins. And both in and out of possession, that's where you'd find Diaby most of the times. Now, our wingers do tend to play very narrow at times, and there is interchanging of positions happening all the time as well, so it's hard to tell. But what's impressive is that when they do change channels, as it were, they seem to stay out of each other's way or not occupy the same space, which of course, numerically and space-wise is not optimal. Major issue as a consequence of this victory, but Manchester United and Newcastle United, they are virtually out of the picture of catching us. I mean, they would both have to win the rest of their games, basically, and we would have to lose the remainder of our games. And right now, at this stage, it oddly feels like Aston Villa has somehow discovered a second wind. Big moment. Our first penalty conceded of the season. Here we are 34 match weeks in. That was the first penalty we gave away, and it reminded me a little bit of Tom Heaton's against Bournemouth at that same end in the season we returned to the Premier League. Now, if you're looking for examples of mental or physical fatigue, look no further than Ollie Watkins straying offside twice in the same game. I mean, that's really rare for him. And look at all the lead up and final action in this moment, starting with Moussa Diaby. Now, was his arm held back? Why, yes, it was. But you know what? Moussa Diaby has to be a whole lot stronger in that situation. And this is the only issue I have with him playing in the high congestion, high traffic, and physical part of the park. His stature does not lend itself to winning a duel like that the way it would with, say, Morgan Rodgers. And then Matty Cash goes to ground when he probably didn't need to. We've seen him make that kind of a challenge before that's led to a penalty. And if you've played the game, you know, and this is why I'm not going to be hard on this guy. It is less tiring to leave your feet and dive in than it is to stay on your feet and keep those feet moving and stay goal side of that ball. That's more tiring. And so I'm not going to platoon this guy. And by the way, I watched the Lille game again. He really did test Chevalier with a good strike in that second half and brought the best out of the goalkeeper. Then he releases, he has the energy to do so, and hits the side netting. Obviously scores a critical goal with 3 minutes to go. And did you have him pegged as one of the primary 5 penalty takers? I certainly didn't, but that was a justifiable selection when he hit that ball so beautifully to keep us going. I've learned to not hold grudges or scapegoat players. Major issue, and one that speaks to the greater implications of this victory. But that 6-point gap over Spurs now is psychologically massive. And we could have a great debate over the merits of what is more preferable, chasing or being chased. I think I would rather be the one being chased. Remember when you were kids, all you wanted your parents to do was chase you, and they would come after you like a monster, and you'd get that jolt of adrenaline and glee, and off you'd go. Well, I wonder if Spurs learned from last year, because the situations are eerily similar. They were chasing us. They need to win, and they have to hope that we don't win anymore. Big issue. Unai Emery's halftime team talk. Wouldn't you love to know what he said? I guess we'll have to wait for the documentary. But I always wonder, at this stage of the season, and keeping in mind that a lot of these players have had Unai Emery as their boss since November of 2022, whether they are as dialed into the messaging from their manager as they would have been, say, 6 months to a year ago, because I'm not using the word repetitive, but I'm sure Unai is very consistent in some of his messaging, demanding, structure, consistent, pushing, all these kind of things. And I could see how maybe a player might drift a little bit mentally, and that's why a lot of coaches have kind of a shelf life of only about 3 years. But he pushed the right buttons, because our performance from minutes 46 to 90 were as good as some of our early season performance. It was glorious. And by the way, can this man not wear the shit out of a 3/4 length jacket? Oh man! And I'm sure that if you got close, you would get the aroma of sandalwood, a little bit of spice, maybe fine Spanish leather, perhaps just the whiff of cigar smoke and fine cognac. Big issue. Who lines up in midfield against Chelsea? Yuri Tielemans really shone this past week, particularly in the league games, because he did both parts of his job so well. He closed down the ball superbly. He was asking for and receiving passes under pressure, and he was making smart, sharp, incisive passes into the forward areas of the field. John McGinn looked just like he did against Arsenal. Strong, stout, sturdy, coming from deeper, forward, and just using his body well. I mean, those two together in the 2 league games this week, it would be pretty hard to say, sorry guys, but we're going to shake things up here. As good and as important a player as Douglas Luiz is. And I also wonder if our Belgian midfield ace is one of those guys who thrives on knowing that he's the man in the middle. Big accomplishment. 20 wins in this Premier League campaign. Shame Ollie Watkins couldn't mark the occasion with his 20th Premier League goal of the season. But still, in the 38-game Premier League era, that's the best ever for Aston Villa, and we still have 4 games left to go. And if we win even just 2 of those 4 games, we are going to put a lot of pressure on Tottenham Hotspur. And I simply cannot believe that any team, including Chelsea, will be capable of coming to Villa Park and winning twice in the same season. Whew. This is heady stuff here. This is historical all-time stuff that's happening. Big issue number 3, King Konza. Keeping in mind that Diego Carlos was the man of the match at Arsenal, and he had to sit and watch the last 2 games, you would have thought his fresh legs might have come in handy on Sunday. And Ezri Konsa was tasked with a very difficult challenge. He had a legitimate Golden Boot candidate in Dominic Solanke facing him up 1v1. Then he had Kerkej and he had Kluivert also buzzing around and pressing him. And there were 2 occasions where it was he versus Solanke in one-on-one duels, and boy, did he come through it immaculately. The first time, he just remained cool and calm. And didn't he do well on that one to come away with the ball? But on the second one, he had to take emergency, evasive action. And didn't he come away with this oh so well, because Solanke had a step. I would love to know the conversations among the technical staff, the justification as to playing Matt Cash versus Diego Carlos, which would move Ezri Konsa potentially wider right. But in this game, as a center back, he was just so quietly and confidently cool as a cucumber. And this is a Bournemouth team that presses very high and very effectively. Big issue number 2, remarkable Rodgers. This cat is 21 years of age, and he is not among the big, sexy names that were being thrown around from the championship of progressing to the Premier League or one day beyond. And this is why I marvel at the recruitment process, the eyeballs of those who matter, getting the criteria right, understanding the tools and the potential of players. And by the way, I watched that Middlesbrough FA Cup game twice. And I'm looking at this going, well, I don't see a player who is head and shoulders above what I think I see from other championship teams. And that's why I'm doing this and not scouting. But what would we have done without Morgan Rogers this past week? So to land him as swiftly as we did, and for the price that we paid, we got the right people in charge finally. I'm sure you've heard the expression, necessity is the mother of invention. Well, when Jacob Ramsey had to officially exit stage left for the rest of the season, there were really only two options, Nicolo Zaniolo and Morgan Rogers, and Big Morgs basically said, thank you, I'll take it from here. And what's incredible is that it's really only been a little over 2 months, and incrementally we keep seeing more every single week. Like on Sunday, we saw all of his tools in action, and he had a hand in all 3 goals. The first one, he was available, he drives the space, and he drives it quickly, but then with one little subtle movement, basically sits down his opposition defender, and from there, he still has to maintain calm and composure. He looked like a seasoned Premier League veteran stuffing that away. And I have to say that in the lead up to the 1-1 goal, this pass by Leon Bailey was every bit as sexy as the 2 Douglas Luiz played in the game at Sheffield United earlier this year. Like, if we did an ancestry DNA on Leon Bailey, would we discover some Brazilian blood in his past? Because this pass could have found the lost city of Atlantis. And by the way, this goal came on the counter to a counter, which is exactly what Anthony Areola did not want to have happen in this game. And I don't think Unai Emery wants that either. He wants control, not chaos. So we countered their counter and made it count. And did we need it? To score a goal on the stroke of halftime changed the complexion of everything. Rogers had a major hand in the 2-1 goal, an eventual game winner, because it was his pass that found Ollie Watkins before Watkins found Moussa Diaby. And then on the 3-1 goal, well, here's where his big 6'3" frame in the congested parts of the field comes in handy, because he can hold off with his strength opponents, and yet he still has the technical ability to maintain the football and keep us in possession, which he did with a very smart and tidy pass. Moments later, we broke, and it was 3-1. When a player is given the opportunity and basically handed the keys of trust by the manager, there are 2 ways you can go. You can blossom, or you can wither. There is a third option too, which is it goes to your head, and all of a sudden you are entitled to that position, which I don't see happening with this guy. Well, Morgan Rogers has taken the blossoming route, and at 21 years of age, if he has shown progression this fast over 2 months, what will happen within 2 years? Just before number 1, the only team working harder than the Villa medical staff, the physios, massage therapists, the dietitians, would be 24/7 Services UK. Do you know Paul Handsaker's team on Monday alone had projects underway in Leeds, Liverpool, Coventry, Manchester, and Birmingham? A lot of long faces in Coventry, apparently, and even some in Manchester for some odd reason. Blowing a 3-0 lead will do that to you. But the point is, word of mouth is the most powerful marketing tool there is. And that's because if you get quality and at a fair price, people come back. Summer's in the air. You know there's a project in your backyard. If you want to entertain, if you want an outdoor cooking space or a tiki bar or a new fence or whatever, now's a great time to make that call. And as busy as Paul and his team are, they're happy to take that call and make time for you. The sooner you start, the sooner you'll be able to enjoy it. And all quotes are fair and free for that matter. And the number 1 big issue or moment that defined Villa 3, Bournemouth 1, wondrous Watkins. This was a performance for the ages from our number 11, who had 210 minutes already under his belt heading into Sunday, which included a really important penalty in the shootout. And yet, Ollie Watkins did everything in this game except score, which he was quite frustrated about, especially in the late chance where he twisted and turned defenders, but he just couldn't open the ball up to then fire it on target. But he really wanted that 20th goal in this game. But the two passes he made to set up those second half goals were nothing short of sublime. And here's where I go back to fatigue. When you're tired and you've put that many miles under your belt in a week, the first thing that you notice is just simple things. The weight and timing or shape of a pass. Well, watching the two passes that led to goals 2 and 3, you would have never known that Watkins had put in the kilometers this past week. So major credit goes to Ollie Watkins' technicians for updating his settings to include career assist mode while also downloading the latest software, which helped improve his channel running, holding off defenders his first touch without any glitches. You think I'm kidding, but have you ever seen Ollie Watkins bleed? Me neither. I rest my case. And by the way, we didn't make enough of Watkins' contributions to the Matty miracle goal at Lille because it was Watkins' ball across against two defenders that hung up in the air, which goalkeeper Chevalier eventually fumbled. I could go back in my social media timeline and find several examples of this, but I'm sure there are a lot of Aston Villa fans who are only too happy to have been proven wrong by this player. And by wrong, I mean dramatically, grotesquely, I prefer Danny Ings, wrong. And I've learned over time that you really probably shouldn't write off a player, especially now that we have arguably the best manager in the entire league, maybe the world, of getting the most or improvements out of individual players. And what I love about Ollie Watkins, and I've loved this from the minute he signed with us, he's just a dude who I think represents everything that's good about this thing. You know, he's a good-looking cat. He's big and strong. He is a relentless worker, a relentless learner, determined, humble, and he has an incredible, solid-state hard drive and motherboard. Let's tabulate the subcategories I've been following throughout the season. 2 games left at Villa Park. Can we maximize the point haul against Chelsea and Liverpool? That would be amazing. Moussa Diaby added to the combined goals for between he and Watkins, even if Ollie didn't score on Sunday. Our first penalty conceded this season, which is really a testament to our patience and our discipline in the box. And it's also a good sign that our first and second half plus-minus ratios are leveling out a bit. It's great scoring loads in the first half, but I think for a consistent team, you want to be able to either hold or build on halftime leads more regularly, so that second number, the second half plus minus, is trending in the right direction. Now for Chelsea. And you know, the first thing that popped into my mind upon looking at this fixture is the fact that Morgan Rogers is besties with Cole Palmer. I mean, almost like brothers in a way. And Cole Palmer has been nothing short of sensational for Chelsea and is a Golden Boot candidate along with our Ollie, and he's on shockingly low wages, but I'm sure Todd Boehly will offer him an 18-year contract or something this summer. Regardless, the point is, when you are playing against a best friend in a game, a guy you grew up with, kind of like when one brother plays against another in a game, you will do anything to be on the right side of that scoreline. As weird as Chelsea's season has been, they still have a pretty decent and dangerous stable of players in their roster. And they rolled us over pretty good in the FA Cup replay at Villa Park earlier this season when they took a page straight out of Newcastle United's book on how to play us at home. And hopefully, as I said earlier, we will have learned from that and used it as a very critical reference point heading into this game. Also, they're going to be coming off a very difficult test at Arsenal on Tuesday, still probably feeling the effects of an emotional and heartbreaking late exit in the FA Cup semi-final to Manchester City through extra time. We will have a fresh Douglas Luiz back, and as much as I have loved watching McGinn and Tielemans hold down the fort in central midfield, you know Luiz is going to have a role in this game. And after we meet on Saturday, it'll be Chelsea hosting Spurs the following Thursday, at which point we all become Chelsea fans. Now, could you imagine if we managed to take all 3 points on Saturday and Chelsea manages to defeat Tottenham, which they kind of have done at the Bridge of late on Thursday? Whew, could be massive. When I think about the feelings that were bubbling up inside me on Sunday upon hearing that final whistle, I mean, this is why football is the most intoxicating drug on the planet. When you mix together that cocktail of joy, relief, exhilaration, excitement, satisfaction, pride. I mean, it makes you feel like you're 10 feet tall. I had to go for a walk after that game to burn off some of the energy. I went 11 and a half kilometers in about an hour and a quarter. I was just absolutely flying. And now we get that little shot of excitement and adrenaline looking on the horizon and seeing that next big game looming, that next cup final ahead of us, and thankfully with a little bit of a buffer this week so we can continue savoring what Villa has just accomplished over the last 7 days. Whew. Until Chelsea, be well, and as always, up the mighty Villa.